Good morning, President Dodd, board members, Dr. Kimberly, and members of the public. It is our pleasure to present to you this morning the 2021-2022 budget and LCAP. I will be presenting the budget portion this morning, and Dr. Meyer and Dr. Guevara will be presenting the LCAP. To move forward, it is always a good idea to look back at where we have just come. I can't help but refer to Charles Dickens' famous quote as we look back at 2020 and 2021. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It was the epic of belief, it was the epic of incredulity. It was the season of light, it was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope, it was the winter of despair. This, to me, sums up the COVID pandemic as we experienced it. Amazingly, through the pain, darkness, and despair that the pandemic brought to us, the human spirit was able to push through, and ultimately, we prevailed. When I look at the state of education at the Lake Elsinore Unified School District over the past year and a half, I am amazed at the courage, professionalism, creativity, innovation, flexibility, and ultimately success that our staff showed. At the turn of a dime, we capitalized upon technology in order to bring education into the living rooms of our students. The integration of technology was the key to success. For many of our staff members, it was a dive into the unknown. However, with tenacity and grit, they pushed into the unknown and came out on the other side a stronger educator with more tools of the trade under their belts. I would like to take this opportunity to first thank the board for your vision and direction through the past year or so. On behalf of all of us here at the district, we would like to thank all the staff, from food service to maintenance and operation, to the fiscal department, to instructional support, and all of those at the school sites, serving our students and families, stepping up to the challenge and prevailing. And to our families, thank you as well for your support. As we move out of the pandemic, we look with anticipation to several milestones. June 15th, the governor will be moving us out of the blueprint, and we look forward to what that looks like for our communities as well as our schools. We anxiously look forward to returning to in-person full-time instruction for those families ready for that, as well as a continued opportunity for distance learning for families who found that this option worked for their family needs best. We are armed with a plan to ensure that any learning that was lost over the past year will be recovered, and just as importantly, we're equipped to support the social and emotional needs of our students. As we look to the dawning of a better tomorrow, we have the unique opportunity to reimagine education. How is our instructional and learning future transformed by the past year? What are our student needs, and how do we best serve those needs? How do we support our staff as they address our student needs? The LCAP is one mechanism that we utilize to direct resources to actions and services that address these questions.
We will now review the 3 LCAP goals. As we have climbed the mountain of adversity, our goals have remained consistent. Goal number 1, stakeholder engagement. Goal number 2, academic achievement. Goal number 3, intervention and acceleration of students. Now let's look at the goals in more detail. Goal number 1 focuses on positive school engagement and ensures that students have instructional materials, highly effective staff, and access to technology in a safe and welcoming environment. The reason or rationale for the goal is to improve chronic absenteeism through engagement. To provide a school engagement also provides healthy outcomes for the organization. Full access to materials and instructional support to encourage student participation. And finally, highly effective staff will be successful with professional development and all of the tools to help meet the needs of all students. Academic achievement of all students will have access to state standards, including ELD standards, that will increase school readiness and college and career readiness. The reasons for goal number 2 are it provides post-secondary options for all of our students in Lake Elsinore, a high-quality education to prepare them for the 21st century college and career opportunities. And all students must continue to grow and show academic improvement on a variety of California dashboard metrics.
This is a new goal for the district this year. In the past, Goal 3 has always been referred to as basic services, but with the COVID pandemic, the LCAP committee felt there was a need to significantly change the district's focus to call out intervention acceleration specifically and place the prior basic services, actions, and metrics in Goal 1 and/or Goal 2. Contained in this goal are actions to support the existing learning recovery plan that has been established at this point. All district staff understand that as students re-engage with in-person learning in August, those students who did not realize the same success as many of their peers will have learning recovery needs that may need to be addressed over the next 3 years. Next fall, as we implement common assessments in mathematics and English language arts, staff will continue to work together to modify the learning recovery plan to meet the unique needs of our students. Whether the students' needs are academic or social emotional learning, district staff will be prepared not only for their return, but also to be able to pivot to meet the needs students will have, as many will be sitting in front of their teachers for the first time in almost 19 months. On May 17th, Liz Atkinson, our district coordinator of the LCAP and community engagement, submitted the 21-24 LCAP to the Riverside County Office of Education for their FastPass review, which entails their review to ensure district compliance to LCAP requirements. As a school district, RCOE provided the district with a few recommendations for revision that all have been documented in the uploaded LCAP documents that you saw for this board meeting. Because there was not enough time for RCOE to review these revisions, district staff met this Monday, June 7th, to affirm the revisions made were actually appropriate. At this review on Monday, there were 4 additional revisions outlined on the slide: temp teachers, stakeholder engagement, CTE completer metric, and increased improved services. These revisions will be made for all stakeholders to review when the final LCAP document is published on June 18th for our upcoming June 24th board meeting. Staff is very excited to know that with these revisions, trustees may take approval action on June 24th, and the 21-24 LCAP is anticipated to be accepted and approved by RCOE in July of 2021. Thank you.
Now for the nuts and bolts of the budget that will support the ongoing needs of our students. Our budget is based upon the following assumptions that were presented in our Governor's May revised budget, as well as by local trends. We are projecting a declining enrollment, which impacts ADA by 200 students each year on an ongoing basis. This past year, we declined by 800 students, and this will also be reflected within our budget. The cost of living adjustment was revised in May to 5.07%. Due to the pandemic, the unemployment insurance rate for school districts throughout the state was increased from 0.0005% to 1.23%. This was a very steep increase in the unemployment insurance rate that amounted to a $2 million hit to our budget. I'm sure everyone has heard in the news about the cost of goods, services, and homes significantly increasing over the past year. The Consumer Price Index percent reflects the projected increase in the cost of goods and services. It generally is around 1%, but this year it has risen to 3.84%. CPI is used to budget the cost of goods and services for the coming year. STRS increases next year by just under 1% and increases another 2% in year 2, projected to stabilize at the 19.1%. PERS increases next year by just over 2% and continues to increase in the out years by 3% and then by 1%. Our multi-year projections include the funds we will receive and have received over the next 2 to 3 years for COVID relief and extended learning opportunities. In May, the governor shared revisions to his proposed budget. The May revised budget then goes to the Assembly and Senate for their revisions, additions, and/or rejections of the budget components. For the first time in recent history, both the Assembly and State adopted identical budgets. Both legislatures rejected the governor's targeted intervention and in-person health and safety grants. They also rejected the increase to the concentration grant, which provides additional revenue to districts with very high numbers of low income, foster youth, and English learners. They did, though, propose to increase supplemental grant money, which serves the same students but puts the money in more districts' hands. There were also revisions to the time frame for implementation of TK for all 4-year-olds, extending it another year. Although this slide highlights areas in which the legislatures did not agree with the governor's proposed budget, there were many areas where the governor and the legislature were in agreement. That should allow for a passage of a state budget without too much delay. But changes can be made to the budget up until the time that the final budget is signed, which is always after we have adopted our district budget. The budget assumptions impact our multi-year projections both positively and negatively. The increase in the COLA, as well as the augmentation of funds for high-need students and one-time federal and state funds, impact our multi-year positively. However, the increase in state unemployment insurance rate, increases in employer contributions to the state pension plans, as well as projected declining enrollment, all have a negative impact on our multi-year projections. Declining student enrollment, in particular, has a negative impact on our revenue over the 3-year budgetary cycle. We refer to the impact as the cliff. The cliff refers to the ultimate reckoning of declining enrollment that we have experienced over the past 2 years that will catch up with us in fiscal year 2022-23. When the state closed schools in March of 2020, we were able to calculate our student average daily attendance, which we refer to as ADA, as of February 2020. At that time, our ADA was 20,008. Our LCFF funding for that year was $209 million. In the current year, we have experienced a significant decrease in student enrollment, amounting to 800 students. The state placed all school districts in what they refer to as a hold harmless position. This means that they would not calculate ADA for the current year and that we could use the ADA from the prior year, 2019-2020, for revenue purposes. Because COLA was at 0% this year, our LCFF revenue funding remained the same as the prior year. Next year, we are projecting another decline in student enrollment of 200 students. Because ADA was not calculated in 2020-2021, we get to go all the way back to 2019-20 ADA for our funding. That means that the decrease in student enrollment of 1,000 over this 2-year period will not be considered due to being in the hold harmless position for 2020-21. So, with a 5% COLA and a 19-20 ADA, we are projected to have an increase in LCFF funding of $10 million. The following fiscal year, 2022-23, is when we hit the cliff. In that year, the hold harmless position no longer is in effect, so it is in this year that we will experience the impact of the significant decrease in ADA we've realized over the past 2 years. In 2022-23, we are projected to have a COLA of 2.48%. We would anticipate that this COLA would generate upwards of $5 million in new revenue. However, with the decrease in enrollment, we find ourselves being funded $4 million less than the prior year, which has a negative net impact of nearly $10 million in revenues. That is the cliff that we have been referring to. The only way we can mitigate the cliff is through student enrollment, and unfortunately, that is not a variable that we have much control over. We will be monitoring closely what our enrollment looks like and make the necessary adjustments to our budget as needed. It is our hope that we will see some of the 800 students who left our district during distance learning return in the fall when we are back to full-time in-person instruction. Here's a look at our multi-year projections based upon the budget assumptions discussed. 2021-22 shows deficit spending in the amount of $9 million. This actually reflects COVID money that was received in bulk this current fiscal year, but will not be spent until next year. That money sits in the ending fund balance until expense next year. The COVID money, as you can see, over the 3-year fiscal cycle relieves much of our deficit spending, but not entirely. It does buy us the gift of time in aligning our expenditures, specifically our staffing, with student enrollment over time. Our ending fund balance consists of a variety of components. We have a 4% reserve for economic uncertainty, and as you can see, in this current year, we have a restricted component that relates to the COVID money received in the current year that will be spent in the following year. We are asking the board to commit the remaining $29.4 million in ending fund balance to the following areas. For payment of post-employment benefits, as we are experiencing an increase in retirements, which increases the number of retirees who will be participating in our post-employment benefits. To the gift of time in aligning our staffing to our reduction in student enrollment needs, and also to preserve cash reserves in part to pay back our TRAN, as well as to be prepared to weather unexpected turns in our economy. We ask that the board approve the 2021-2022 budget and LCAP for the district. This concludes the presentation, and we are available to take any questions that you might have at this time.